Hey guys, I'm Carla from Sculpted Studios, and this is...
I'm Stevey G. It's nice to meet you.
We have both been in the industry quite some time, him even longer than me. I'm pressing about a decade. Coming up on a decade this year.
Yeah, I think I'm, 2012?
Yeah.
I don't do math very well. So
No, you don't even know how old you are.
Decade, 11 years, something like that. Yeah.
I convinced him to be my special guest today.
Just twisted my arm.
I did. I totally did. I was like, oh, by the way, I'm doing a live this morning, and you're coming. Don't hit the table. I'll do my best. You told me I had to sit really high. Guys, I can't tell you how high up I'm sitting right now. I'm literally like Lily Tomlin. I can barely, I can barely reach the floor. Okay, so we're gonna get started with some questions and answers. This is going to be about an hour, hour and a half live. So, take advantage. And let's start with the first question. Okay, I'm gonna answer it live. So Linda, you are up. Do I pre-numb for lip services? Ooh, great question. So the answer is no, I do not. I never actually really use numbing in general, pre or secondary. And my personal reasons, so I'm gonna talk through the difference between like something factual that I may tell you and something preferential that I may tell you. And I'm gonna preface that by saying one of my biggest pet peeves about the industry in general, and this is no shade on anybody in particular, but people tend to parade their preference as fact. And I try very much not to do that. So I'm going to tell you that I don't use pre-numbing and I very rarely use secondary numbing. I'm going to tell you my scientific reasons behind that and some of the other legal reasons that may affect you as well. So the use of numbing, whether it's primary or secondary, may or may not be allowed underneath your licensing. So I happen to have studios in New York, I have studios in Miami, and we have studios in Phoenix. Each one of these locations says something different legally based on my tattoo license. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a nurse, and I'm not an esthetician. I am a tattoo artist by my license. With that being said, New York, Miami, require you to be an esthetician working under a medical director or above in order to use anything over 5% lidocaine. And that means that lidocaine is the only active ingredient as well. Okay, so a lot of pre-numbings, they're more than just lidocaine. They're lidocaine, tetracaine, benzocaine, epinephrine, things like that, which I am not legally allowed to use. I'm also not legally allowed to use that on broken skin. So that's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons why I don't, and I've gotten used to not using it. A lot of my colleagues in the UK are not allowed made for you. Okay. That is the legal reasons behind why I don't grab for numbing or gravitate for it. The secondary reason is that it's a vasoconstrictor. So what happens when your vascular system is constricted is that the tissue can get very, very firm and very dense and tight to work with. It is going to require you to use potentially more speed, potentially more pressure, potentially a deeper, harder stretch, which my clients tend to express more often than not is more uncomfortable. On top of that, numbing is not a nerve blocker. So it is not going to eradicate sensation. And some people have asked me, what about injectable lidocaines? I don't work in a dentist's office, so I don't have that Mr. Sucky thing, that's what I call it, that mouth vacuum. And clients can't control their drooling level, for a lack of a better word, their saliva, and I don't want anybody to choke. So no, I don't use injectable lidocaines either. But what's happening is that the cellular activity in the body gets slowed down in that area. That's what that numbing is doing. It's putting it to sleep like your foot goes to sleep if you sit on it wrong or cross your leg wrong. And because of that, you actually only feel like that sensation is a little further away. And if you've ever uncomfortable, and I've had clients and students where we've numbed like one side or one lip, etc., and I've asked them to compare the difference, and they generally tell me that the side that's numbed is causing them more discomfort than the side that's not. So that's just some food for thought. But yeah, that's why I don't use numbing from a legal perspective. It's also why I don't use numbing from a scientific perspective. So I just find it gives me more struggle than less. There are some benefits to it as well, right? Some people really do like to use it. It can, help with swelling to some degree. Maybe you like having firmer, denser tissue, you're used to working like that, or you were trained to stretch that deeply or work with really long stroke machines or high speeds and stuff like that. I just don't work like that. I tattoo very slowly and very softly, so I don't find the need for it. Most of my clients say that they are at a discomfort level of somewhere between a 2 and a 4 by the end of it, 10 being the worst thing they've ever experienced, and they put waxing at a 6, so I'm not stressed out about that at all. I hope that answers your question, Linda. And we'll go ahead and go to the next one. Are world famous pigments bad or not advisable to use on fits 1 to 3 through to high titanium content, like it's the first color in the ingredients of lots of their pigments? Okay, so there's nothing bad or good, right? It's all about the goal that you're looking to achieve. Your pigments are just a tool in your toolbox, okay? So world famous Perma Blend, they're made by the same company, Perma Blend, and world famous also white label many of the brands that you know and love. And there are some significant differences between tattoo inks and permanent makeup pigments, but not crazy differences that make them not usable, right? If you've got lip pigments and you wanted to use them on eyebrows or areolas, it's not like you can't, right? Steve's got a scalp set that I use all the time for eyeliner. Knowing your pigmentology and what it can create is some of the pigment science is some of the really important things that we need to know as artists, right? I always say color and pigment theory are literally 60% of your job. But to go more direct to your question, tattoo inks generally have much more titanium dioxide, right? They're offering you a bigger bottle. Titanium dioxide is very inexpensive, and it also increases opacity. Tattoo artists want to have a lot of bang for their buck when they're doing, body work and body art pieces, etc. They also have very high alcohol content, which makes them get into the skin pretty quickly, which is why a lot of artists like them, and they dry very quickly. So as you're working, the layer that you're putting in, the next layer is attaching to it, which is also why we see the healed results look a little chunky in the skin. The lower you are on the Fitzpatrick, and I hate that scale for so many reasons.
We don't use the Fitzpatrick scale.
But I know where you're headed, right? Lighter lip tissue, and you kind of get that cottage cheesy look from that overabundance of titanium dioxide. It's because the tissue is softer, right? The more eumelanin someone has in their body, generally, right? It's not an always. It's kind of a general rule of thumb. The more eumelanin somebody has, the denser, in some cases, the tissue can be. Now, I have Fitz 6s who also have very soft, very smushy kind of a lip texture, where an overabundance of titanium dioxide could inadvertently cause something like that. Titanium likes to join to itself, and it's also the most dense of the colorants that we use. So if you've ever looked at a pigment bottle that settles, the most dense stuff sits at the bottom, where as it gets less dense, it starts to stack on top of that. In the skin, it's going to do the opposite, and it's going to create kind of a shell. And I've seen lip work where people are mixing, I swear, like 10 plus tattoo inks, and all I can think of in my head is, oh my God, the overabundance of titanium there is going to be really difficult to work with later down the road. It's our job as artists to do no harm, and it's also our job as artists to help our clients understand sustainability in something that's permanent on their face. So I hope that answers your question, Catherine, and welcome to the webinar this morning. Sure. All right, Ingrid, you're up. All right, what company mineral pigments would you say is worth trying? It depends on what you're doing with it. I don't particularly use mineral pigments at all for lip work, and for those of you who don't know, she's using the word mineral as a substitution for inorganic pigments. Different countries, we call them kind of different things. My guess is you're from Europe. I don't particularly like them. It's my personal preference. I don't really use them. I don't like how iron oxide works in the skin. and I don't like what it causes long term. You know, when I first started in the industry, that's what we had. We had iron oxide pigments, and we didn't like the results of them then, which is why hybrid pigments were born in the first place. So I've really gotten used to working correctly with carbon-based, which is also a mineral when it's processed. But I've gotten used to working like that, and I really enjoy the results that I get like that. It's not that mineral pigments are better or worse than organic-based pigments or hybrids. It's how you understand working with them that's going to give you the result. It's not one or the other. But some good brands out there, I guess I would suggest LI has got a great little mineral line. I know Brovie has dipped their foot into inorganics. Tina's got Fade. So there are definitely some, you know, brands out there, and I've tried most of them. I just prefer to work with a hybrid.
It's important. It's funny because, you know, I've watched this trend shift over the past decade, and it's not a singular choice. You don't pick one over the other. You decide what you're using for the result you're trying to get. Like
Right.
in the early days of permanent makeup, the idea was to have something that was less than permanent because, you know, certain colors,
Right. And we've
it's just the
also
technology
learned-
wasn't there. So then the market changed, and people no longer wanted to keep coming back and getting touch-ups all the time. So when that shifted, people were, well, I want a more permanent result. I want something that stays longer and is bolder, and then that happened. People didn't know how to use that really properly. So then the kickback from that was, well,
iron oxides. And
now
guys,
we want something that fades. And the truth of the matter is, no one of those things does one of those things.
and also, just because you're using a mineral pigment does not make it not permanent.
Right.
Like,
No.
that's not a thing. So mineral pigments are more dense. And because they're more dense, it's tougher to have them reach if you're in the skin, let's just keep it to the skin. If you're in the skin, to reach that papillary layer or that sweet spot. So what's happening is during the exfoliation process, the more dense pigments didn't travel to that sweet spot and they're exfoliating out. So it's not that it's less permanent. That's why you're seeing like those salmony colors come back, etc. But they're just as difficult to remove. They're a little more challenging to get in. So there's other
And
things.
they're just larger.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Molecule sizes.
No, they're not.
Iron oxide is.
So they are denser. They
That's what I'm
carry
saying.
a larger,
There's
right.
more per volume.
There's more weight.
Right. So it's like filling up a basket of tennis balls versus.
But you can still have a
Versus-
pound of feathers and a pound of basketballs. It's
Right,
it's
but
weight,
you're gonna have
not
one
size.
basketball versus 50 marbles.
Right, but people think that the particle sizes are larger, and they're not. Everything's
the
milled to
particle size,
1
I'm talking
micron.
about molecule
Yeah,
size.
but you're talking about like molecular chemistry. So like what you're talking about is like how many protons and
Being
neutrons.
able to fit more in a space.
Right.
That's what
It's
I'm saying.
density though. It's
Exactly.
weight that's causing that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can fit more in a space.
So if you're using the same amount of pressure and the same amount of needle, right, your organics are going to travel a little deeper than the stuff that's more dense, like iron oxides. So that's something to just keep in mind. And it's not one pigment brand or dye either. And I see a lot of artists get stuck in that too, where like, I only use World Famous, or I only use Perma Blend, or I only use Hanafi, or I only use Brovie. Like, there are times when I reach for different brands for different reasons because I understand how the pigment is made, what it's comprised of, its opacity, how it settles, etc. So those are really important things to know as artists as you choose, because what you use on potentially your more mature client may not be something you want to use on your younger client or somebody who has a lot of natural hair structure or somebody who doesn't. So don't be afraid to try new things, and not on clients, but do the learning curve that it takes to understand what your pigments are made out of and why. This is not paint by number, so just remember that when you're choosing stuff like that. Can you briefly explain your pigment sets and how they work? So I don't know how you're educated, I don't know how you're trained, but I can tell you about Embody and Enhance, and I'll let Steve do Restore and Reclaim. Oh, he's got it right in front of me. Look at that. Cool. All right, guys. So Embody and Enhance, we made over quite some time, years. It was about a 6-year project here. They are based on our color theory system, the sculpted color theory system, method, whatever you want to call it. And we spent 4 years with Perma Blend. Not only in R&D, but in testing. Had a global testing team for the last almost 2 years of the project, so that we had a multitude of healed results even before they reached the public. But you're going to get the pigment set. This one happens to be Embody. I'll do Enhance in a second. And inside, you're going to see these 2 items. Okay, on the back of this is a scan, right? That'll take you to the landing page with some digital information as well. And here you'll have the use guide. Guys, these are understanding of color theory and what your client needs for their result. That's you, right? My chart here isn't going to take that responsibility away from you. This is something that I put together as a way for artists to be able to kind of double check their work, understand what's going on, be able to maybe get an idea when they needed a little bit of help, but it's not meant to do your job, right? Your job as an artist is to be able to pick the proper color for your client as well as put it in, right? So inside here, there's a trifold, right? Your instructions are literally written right here. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. Step 1 would be to identify where your client's hue, right? The most prevalent darker part of your neutralization client is on the chart. Now, Steve's not a neutralization, but if he was, I would literally stick it up to his face until something clicked and something was, all right, let's say Steve's right here, okay? It's gonna give you some information in that cube. And I'll get it close enough where you guys can see it for a second. Right about there, right? It's going to give you some information. It's trying to help you learn some things too. So I can see that his undertone, right, is orange. We're just going to make this up, right? Steve doesn't have neutralization. And let's say he's here in the middle, okay? That is telling me that he has a medium level value and a medium level saturation, right? Your value and your saturation are important because they speak to the opacity or the coverage that you're going to need for your client. Down on the bottom of the bottom row, and on the top of the top row, you're going to see a colored swatch. That colored swatch is what your base mix will look like when you combine it. The base mix here is a 2 to 2 to 1 ratio of mod 3, base 4, and base 1, right? That equals 5 if you do the math. And I'm gonna double it to 10 because I want enough in my pigment cup to make the modifiers I need to add for value, which are listed here, and the modifier I need to add to work with the saturation, again, speaking to opacity and coverage over here, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and mix my 10 drops of this. And because he's a medium level, I'm gonna come over here and it says, okay, for medium value, I'm going to add 3 to 5 drops of the suggested modifier. The modifiers are located next to the undertone. You can see them in the corner here. It's again mod 3. So I'm going to be adding an additional 3 to 5 drops to my 10 drop base mix of my value modifier. And then I'm going to slide over one more, right? Because I'm adding opacity, and in pigment, we do that by adding titanium dioxide, it can also make the pigment a little bit thick. You're going to be increasing surface tension, which is going to reduce your saturation level. So we want to keep those even, and we're going to work with dilution. In our set, we call it Adjust, okay? And it is the specific dilution to the set. No, you cannot just use anything you want. You need to use what's here. And it's going to tell me to add a 2 to 3 drops of that dilution, which will make the pigment more workable and more usable. These pigment sets were designed to have the lowest amount of titanium dioxide that I am aware of on the market. None of the colors have over about a 10% threshold of titanium dioxide, so that's really amazing. And if you wanted it to go higher, you always could by adding those modifiers. right? You're going to probably need to enhance your client's color after that, or potentially even do another session due to the responsible use, I guess I would call it, of titanium dioxide. So that's how Embody works. I've also put some case studies over here on the other side. An example of moving somebody from Embody to Enhance is over here as well. So there's definitely a lot of fun information here. And if you really want to understand the color theory that went behind building this, I highly suggest you take the lip color theory class, which is on SCULPTEDSTUDIOS.com.
Go over the formulations, like how it was made and all, like why they're different.
I'll go over that in a minute. Let me do this next one first. But yeah, he's right. Okay, so Enhance is the next set. And I would say if you are going to be working with neutralization clients, you're going to want both sets. If you are working with clients who are in those lighter lip colors or don't have a lot of multi-tonal lip clients, right? It's not just a higher fits thing. I've got fits 6s who do not need neutralization, and I got fits 1s who do. So do not lock yourself into, oh, well, I don't see clients in upper Fitzpatrick's, or I only see clients with upper Fitzpatrick's. It's going to pigeonhole you. Don't do that to yourself. So Enhance comes the same way, right? Got a little scan code that takes you to the landing page, and inside here is also another chart, and you have your beautiful colors in here. Again, these were designed to have very low titanium, which is amazing. And you would do something very similar here, right? So it's on a trifold. On the left side is your instructions, right? And it goes over potentially giving your client a blush or a very natural result, a vibrant, which is still very soft in its opacity, but more of like a punch, right, of color, and a more bold result, which is more like a lipstick type of look, right? And what you'd want to do to create those changes. You would use the central panel to identify where your client's natural lip fell, and you'll be able to pick from there. So for example, if my client was in the gin column at, let's just say, number 4, and I wanted a blush result, I'm literally going to follow the instructions. I'm going to count up 3, 1, 2, 3, and make the mix, right? So this is gin, right? And it is telling me on 10 drops, I want to use 1 to 2 drops of Adjust or the dilution, okay? If I wanted a more vibrant look, I can either count up to 4 or I can count up to 4 and also combine the 2 and do a 50-50 mix, which is right here, right? The information's right here. And if I want to do something more bold, it tells me also what to do there, right? I'm going to count up as well, and I'm going to skew the ratio to what's next to it. So these are grouped in pairs, as you guys will notice. It is class 1, class 2, and class 3, and these colors have relationships to one another. So Poppy is a pure colorant, right? It's only got one single color, and then it happens to be red 254. And Gin is a combination of that red 254 as well as some titanium dioxide, and I believe it has yellow 138 in it as well. Can't think of it off the top of my head right now. But it is meant to be more impactful, right? So you have the more sheer, I would say, and the more opaque partner to each, right? You also have what we call 2 modifiers in here. You have Glam and you have Haze. Glam is intended to increase the value or lighten it, whiten it by adding more opacity and more titanium dioxide. And Haze is there to help you lower the value or earthen and deepen any color mix that you would like. So that is how this works as well. So Linda, I hope that helped as well. And as Steve said, let's talk a little bit about formulation. So Embody and Enhance, like I said, they were quite a long project. And they were a long project for a lot of reasons. One, I truly wanted to base it on the color theory of our canvas. And after years of collecting data, I had something really tangible, something that was so repeatable that it's algorithmically sound, like mathematically, physically sound. And when I happened to be in a clubhouse running my soapbox of a mouth, and unbeknownst to me, Anne-Marie Rubino, who is the owner of Perma Blend with her family, her brother, she heard me, and she reached out to me the next day, and boy, did I think I was in trouble. I was like, boy, what did I say? And she's like, I would really love to work with you. What you're saying is industry changing. And she offered to send me everything that Perma Blend and World Famous made. And I said, I don't need you to do that. I already know kind of what I want to do. And when she asked why, because usually they send the things out and, you know, everybody mixes colors together and decides what they'd love is a visual hue. And then that's what they create. And I was like, well, that's not how I want to do it. I really want to base this on color theory. I want to base this on what the body naturally makes. And that way we can give longer, more sustainable results to clients. And because we are working in lip tissue, nobody's really ever looked at the fact that lips are not skin. Skin contains protein, keratin. It's keratinized tissue. It's an organ. It's part of your interaugmentary system. And your lips are not. Your lips are a modified mucous membrane comprised primarily of lipid tissue or fat. And if you guys have ever had like the old salad dressing bottles with oil and water, you know that they don't mix. So a lot of the formulation, and for those of you guys who don't know, dilution solutions like this one, are generally the liquid formula to the chemical liquid formula to the powder, right? The powder gets involved in this, it gets mixed together, and the liquid is the vehicle that brings the pigment powder or the colorants into the skin or into the tissue. And nobody ever looked at how this liquid was impacting the surface tension, the suction that draws pigment into the lip itself or into the skin, and what that relationship was with, you know, the struggles that people are having with implantation, retention, and saturation. We noticed during the testing cycles is that it's not going to behave like some of the traditional permanent makeup inks or maybe even the tattoo inks you've been using to tattoo lips, because the formulation is quite different. You're going to see a more sheer impact when you use them, but you're going to see much more retention and a lot less exfoliation and peeling during the healing process, because we're able to increase suction by decreasing surface tension and get this stuff into the lips a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, and because of that, just talking with one of my color theory graduates last night, and she shared a beautiful example with me. If you're here today, I hope you don't mind me using your example. I won't use your name, I promise. But she was sending me some of her work prior to taking the color theory class, and she took an in-person class with a really amazing, wonderful, talented artist as well. And she's like, the difference is staggering in the results when you use something that's really truly meant for the lip and you understand the difference in the color theory and how it is based on the lip tissue itself. So yeah, big differences in the formulation, and we really broke the mold when we did the scalp stuff too. Do you want to talk about that briefly while I scan the questions?
Also, like, you know, we started this project right when Reach became a thing, and it forced us to shuffle a little bit. You know, it forced us to kind of relook, like, there's a lot of stuff we couldn't use anymore, not only on the color side, but different alcohols and other different materials. So it forced us to kind of start exploring other options, things that haven't ever really been looked at before. You know, it was a really interesting kind of relationship, because I don't think, to my knowledge, it's you know, usually the chemists, they know chemistry, you know, and they kind of rely on the artist and everything to give certain feedback, and it's not so often where like those boundaries are pushed, because usually they don't have to be, you know, like it works. So with Reach, when certain things, you know, weren't available to use and we liked the way that they worked, we had to find other materials, and through that search of other materials, we found better materials and materials that were able to do other things. And then that changed not only the chemistry and the formulation, but I mean,
even the relationship,
literally how everything was put together. Yeah, and the relationship on how, you know, they work with artists. You know, we literally worked with the chemists and formulators, like back and back.
And we still do.
Yeah, throwing ideas at each other. Hey, what about this? Why doesn't this work? How do we do that? And it got them thinking, like, oh man, we never really thought about that.
Yeah, we design pigment
can
to
do
go
that.
in, and we've been doing this for years.
Let's try this. Let's shift that. So that was
One of the amazing things we learned from working with the team over at Perma Blend, and one of the reasons that we chose to work with Perma Blend, we were going to release pigments another way. And, not only do they have an incredible amount of experience under their belt, but they were really willing to sit down with us and still do. I could pick up the phone right now and talk to the chemist. Our pigments are still sitting on shelves so that they can do long-term data and things like that. So, it's incredible what that team over there was doing, and their level of respect for compliancy around the world and how to work change into their own processes to make things more readily available and widely available in all countries, because everybody has got different rules and regulations, is one of the reasons we went with them. And one of the reasons why they are so wonderful, these pigments, is because of the efforts that they were willing to put in as well, and take our data and our science and our ideas and bring them to life in boxes. I mean, this took years, and I have test results and healed results that go back 6 years with some of the earliest versions of these pigments, and we are constantly evolving. Like just a couple of months ago, we started to test how the pigments settle over really long term. So we had bottles sitting on the shelf for years at this point, and we're starting to test even what changes over time, which is really just an amazing thing. And they also have an incredible buying power, and it makes a difference when you can buy a quality ingredient at top shelf level versus the same ingredient that might be, I don't know, like, what do you call it with steak when you have like grade A, grade B, grade C? Like you can buy, for example, carbon.
You have more buying power.
Right.
You can go to the highest quality sellers with a big budget and buy the best stuff, which may not be available to anybody else because of quantity or quality,
Relationship.
quantity and quality relationships. I mean, it's
a fascinating world.
Yeah, it's a small world.
I would recommend, if you're really curious about the science behind the ink, Perma U has a science behind the ink course that Anne-Marie does, and it's really lovely. And they go through the process of how Perma Blend makes their inks and stuff like that. So really great course, highly recommended. Okay, next question. Iman, hey baby, how are you? Okay, I'd like to know how you edit your pictures and the apps you use so you can see the color as true as it is in real life without it looking fake. To the important thing about pre and post care. All right, well, I'll do the first question first. So guys, I wish I could tell you that I did anything fancy, but I really don't. I've got a ring light that has a cool setting at, what's the
5,200?
Yeah, 5,200,
5,800?
58. The highest it'll go, 52 or 58. I'm not sure what it is. And I
Which is
just
white light.
Yeah, very, very white light. And I use my iPhone 15. I mean, Steve's been trying to get me to use the cameras that we have here, and I can't be bothered, to be honest. So I use it like this. Sometimes I put the macro clip-on lens here, which is about 15 times zoom. Sometimes it blows out the color, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes I use the wide angle on that same clip-on. But other than that,
Because your iPhone is set up to post to social media. So unless you're going to, if you want to go the professional camera route, it's a headache. Not only is it expensive, but everything has to be lit perfectly, and then it all has to go into some type of post color correction. I mean, the iPhone is just, I think almost everything we do is shot. All of our content,
I'm pretty
procedure-wise, is shot iPhone. Sometimes, like our courses.
Yeah, like long
our
format
online
demos,
courses,
maybe.
We'll shoot with the.
But even that, guys, I do with the cell phone literally pointed down on a boom. Like it's very simple. I did a post a couple of maybe weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago. You can go dig back through the feed about the new camera settings for the iPhone 15. So you want to do that, but you can also kind of YouTube that kind of stuff and find out what the settings are and things like that. But I don't do anything fancy to edit. I just use Canva, guys. I just put pictures together in Canva. I don't edit my photos. I honestly wish that I had time to do some of like the more fancy stuff, but just because I love the way it looks artistically. But yeah, at the end of the day, you know, I have to do my job plus that plus content. Like something suffers, and it's generally just a shot. I mean, I am literally I do this, and then I do it when I'm done, and then I do it when they're healed, and I stitch it together in either CapCut or Canva. I'll do it as well now, and even now the editors in iPhone and even TikTok are even letting you clip photos and images together. So yeah, that's a pretty simple one. Okay, important things about pre and post care, depending on the canvas, skin type that you change for better healing. Depends on more the area than anything else. Brows and eyeliner are a lot different in pre and post care than lips. It does change by skin type. It does change by, you know, whether or not I'm working with a neutralization or not. And it's not because they're darker or lighter in skin tone. It's because of how much opacity and coverage I need. Some pre-care stuff that you want to be aware of, especially with things like eyeliner, are things like lash serums and lash glues. Like, I don't touch a client who's been using lash serum. They need to stop or suspend it for at least 90 days. The bruising can be really severe, and I make them sign a waiver agreeing that they have suspended those things or had those lashes taken off at least in that time frame, and that they understand the risks of potentially getting tattooed with having that. Same thing with retinols on the skin. I have them suspend that at least 2 weeks prior, because it is going to thin the surface of the skin and stuff like that. I know Steve has his clients exfoliate their scalps. I have my clients exfoliate their lips. They want to be coming soft and supple and hydrated. I also have a very serious conversation about caffeine and about the wacky tobacco. I mean, you want to chew it, you want to smoke it, that's totally up to you, but you do not want to come high or having been high within the last 48 hours. You will be extremely sensitive, and it will make you really uncomfortable on the table, not beyond anything that any kind of topical lidocaine would even help you with. So those would be some of the hot buttons. So I kind of touched on this one already, Linda. What kind of aftercare do I use? It does depend. I stay away from lip aftercare that has any kind of petroleum base in it. Some clients don't have a choice, and the only thing that they have access to after they've run out of what I've given them is Aquaphor. But I love Miel Healing. It's Miel Healing Pro on Instagram. I also like giving my clients a little bit of silicone-based glide, and you can get that. I believe it's called Skin Theory Tattoo on Instagram. They have a dimethicone-based glide, which is also silicone-based. Silicone is really incredible for healing. But things like coconut oil or herbal oils, like citrusy stuff, it's going to pull pigment out and not help keep it in. So I am pretty careful when it comes to lip aftercare. Okay, I think this is Joelle. I should have worn my glasses today. I struggle with implanting pigment into the middle of the lower lip. Any tips on getting better retention there? Yeah, a lot of times it has to do with stretch and needle angle. So your needle needs to be at 90 degrees contact to the surface you are tattooing on. Do I have anything round? I do. Okay. So, right, the lip is round, right? It's not flat. And as I see artists do it all the time in classes, as they come up the lip, they don't change the angle of the needle to meet the surface, right? So this is no longer at 90. It's going to go straight through on more of a horizontal than a vertical plane. So your needle has to change its angle, right? You have to constantly be working on the tip of the needle, whether you're working with a single needle or a multi-needle configuration. The tip is where you want to be. Now, I do know a lot of people who work more or been trained more of like a tattoo style for the lips, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and work with mags more at a 45-degree angle, or, you know, potentially 60 to 45, but it's a little bit different from a technique perspective. So I'm just going to assume that we're working with like single needle, round shaders, or that you've been at least taught the 90 contact, right? And there's a reason for that. It has to do with surface tension and the way that pigment enters into the skin, okay? So as clients are being stretched, I see that they're being stretched flat. And what's happening is that the central part of the lip is being swallowed a little bit by the mouth. And it's very difficult to maintain that 90-degree point of contact when you stretch, first of all, that far away, and second of all, that flat. So what I try to do is I try to bring my client's lip volume underneath me, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. I just can't talk and do it at the same time. So I want to make sure that I am working with the lip tissue. So if I turn to the side, I roll it down as I get to the center and press it flat. So the volume of the lip is underneath, and you'll notice that my stretch is extremely close. I'm not over here. It's not an eyebrow. I'm here. So that would be one of my suggestions. Also, that area of the lip is thicker, so it's going to need you to focus more. And a lot of times I find in the industry that people are taught a step-by-step. Right? And I get why that happens, and there's nothing wrong with it, but that step-by-step is pigeonholing a lot of you guys. Like, you forget that you can think outside the box too, right? Like, it's not like do this or die. So they're like, oh, well, my instructor taught me to go from the vermilion border to the waterline, go over that area 3 times, move 50%, go across the whole lip and do that 5 times or 3 times or whatever it may be. Well, you're not addressing in that the fact that the area on the outside of the lip is thinner. The area on the inside of the lip is thicker. So you may need to compress your movements. You may need to overlap your movements differently in the center. You may need to change directions. You may need to stretch a little differently. Maybe that area needs 5 passes where the rest of it only needs 3. So you have to understand that you are essentially coloring in a surface, and you have to bend the technique to what you need, not to the name of the service, right? I see it a lot with things like speed. I see it a lot with things like needle choice. People are like, what needle do you use? What speed do you use? Etc. For lip blush. Irrelevant. What needle do I need? What speed do I need for the texture of the client's lips that I'm currently working on? That's what matters. So yeah, I hope that helps, and it should. But yeah, you're gonna have to wanna change maybe your stretch around and really focus on what you're doing for contact. It's definitely important. You might want to work on latex and curve it over something like a piece of fruit, or work on maybe a banana or a mango and try and teach yourself that curved contact a little bit better. Okay, Danielle. Now that I'm a certified PMU artist, how do I build my portfolio? I'm really having a hard time finding people. Wonderful question. So, Steven, you want to come over and answer this one too? This is a good one. So, starting in the industry, you know, unfortunately, I think that the industry does a bit of a disservice and says, okay, you're going to be certified in permanent makeup, which, by the way, is not actually a thing. Like, you can't get certified or licensed in permanent makeup. You receive a certificate for learning. You receive a certificate potentially for attendance, or maybe you've worked with a mentor. But there's no actual certification or licensing for this, at least now.
Couple states.
Couple of states, right? Oregon, I think, is one of them now.
Jersey, Oregon, Tennessee. That's about it.
In general. But so let's just clarify that piece of it. I see it all the time. 95 times certified. Certified in what? But getting clients is always something that you're going to have to work for, and you're going to have to work towards, and building that portfolio. And the best thing that you can do is word of mouth, right? To build your portfolio. I did my first 100 clients for free. For free. No, I did not have a $100,000 career on the 3rd day of my training, right? It's just not a reality. And I did a lot of those clients for free. And if you need to post work, you know, to ask your mentor if you can use their work as an example of saying, hey, I learned from this person. I'm looking for models for photo content, etc.
It's all in the language.
Yeah.
You can make an ad, or it's all in the way you say it. Like, people get caught up thinking that they're new at this, so they have to do it for free, or they have to do it at a super discounted price. And sometimes it's hard to get people to pay you a good rate when you're brand new. But you also just don't want to throw things out for free. The way you do it is you put up a post or you put up an ad that says you are looking for a very specific candidate to do a procedure on to add to your portfolio, like an actual model.
And you put the value.
And you say, you know, and not, do it that way. And just say that you're looking for a certain look from a certain person to do a demonstration to create to add to your portfolio. This way somebody feels special. They don't feel like they're just getting worked on because you need skin, you know, and it makes it feel a little bit more
personal,
like official, and a little bit more personal, where people feel that they have to be a candidate for something that you could potentially say no to them, and it's not just like a free for all. Hey, I just need skin. I just need to do somebody. Yeah. Right. And
I see a lot of times.
Stay away from your friends.
Yeah.
The
and
initial,
your family.
The initial move is like, you know, go after the people that trust you, right? Like your family, your friends, and that's that are around you have shitty work, and that's not really the best display of what you're capable of. So I would try to push that off a little bit.
Push your boundary.
The craziest shit I've ever done for a model. What should I tell them?
I don't know. I don't. Oh yeah, why not?
In LA. We needed a model. We found somebody who was less than fortunate. Cleaned them up, shaved their head, and gave them a procedure and a couple bucks and a meal, and we got
15
got
years
what
ago.
we needed.
10
We got
years
what
ago.
we needed. Yeah, that was a long time ago. You can also work with like
Other types of people in your industry, like not competing, but like symbiotic services, like maybe, you know, an esthetician or a lash artist or an injector, or, you know, somebody else who's taken, you know, maybe another artist who's also just starting out. So you're both building your portfolios and you can exchange it. And I do want to touch back on the value. So what Steve said is really valuable, but also like put like your goal value on there. Like, let's just say you want to charge $700 to do lip blush, right? You know, valued at $700. So that way, you know, you aren't undercutting yourself. I see it all the time with people in the industry that are new. Lip blush, you know, $300, or eyebrows, $75. Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot when you want to raise your prices. And for those of you who are contemplating, well, I have, you know, raised my prices, like discounts and things like that will also shoot you in the foot. Like, trying to go back to full pricing and things like that after you've been giving people 70% discounts just to book you is really difficult. So just be very mindful about how you look at that from a business strategy standpoint.
Also, I hear a lot of times like, I have no content. How can I make clients trust me that I'm good at what I do? Mm-hmm. So like she mentioned before, you know, if you trained with somebody, they should be able to offer you some photos. Mm-hmm. And
I do it. You do it.
I could care less if you use my stuff. If you don't credit me, I don't care. You know, I give people permission, but it's also plenty fine to like use their content and say, hey, this is who I was trained by. This is what it's going to look like. But also, like, first of all, you just need to get comfortable filming yourself and making content. But use what you know and like the way that you practice to show your expertise, because you only don't look like an expert to people who are more expert than you. Your clients have no idea that, you know, you showing the way you practice, drawing your eyebrow map or whatever, all these little things that seem kind of like mundane and silly and unimpressive are unimpressive to other artists. It's interesting from a client perspective, and that adds to like your overall value as a perceived expert, which, you know, which
your, you know, healed results are important to catalog. And, you know, another thing too is if you're having trouble getting models, I know that we do it here at Sculpted, and I don't know if a lot of places do or have, but we have mentor programs for all of our graduates. So when you finish any of our in-person hands-on trainings, you automatically have the options from our mentor program, which include things like coming back to the studio to work more on your theory or work more on your practice, shadow, and it also gives you the opportunity to work on more models, whether or not you're bringing them and you work supervised, or we can help you provide them. So it's, you may need to take a couple of trips back to your
brings up a whole different topic. Like, you also need to understand that your 3-day training, 5-day training, whatever it is not
enough.
That's the beginning. That's where you get started. Right? You need to circle back and do training days, do model days, and that way you're not just
it's hard
destroying people in your studio. Like
it takes,
this is a serious art.
It takes 18 months in New York and Florida to become an esthetician. And that's washing faces, blackheads, waxing. Like, nothing permanent here. And, people are trying to tattoo after 2 and 3 days on actual people, unsupervised. I have been learning body tattooing, and I've been working with somebody now for almost 2 years on that skill. And every time I do a body tattoo, I am still with my mentor in the physical presence of me. And I take it very seriously because of that. So you want to remember that this is a journey, and that first year, 2 years may require you to kind of come back and forth with your educator and with your mentor. So you really are putting out, the best, and you aren't putting something on someone's face that you are throwing up in a Facebook group to hear everybody tell you that they need emergency removal. And some of these things aren't removable, and they're never coming all the way out. So, it's better to not make the mistake than to make one, or to make sure that you're working with somebody who's going to help you along the way. Okay, let's see. All right, how do you feel about mags for lips versus a 1RL? I've used everything from a 1RL all the way up to what did you give me that one day? An 88 round shader? What was that? It was an 88 round shader?
88 or 122.
Yeah, 122. Like,
ones we're working with.
It's not needle per service. It's what's my goal and the tissue that I'm working in, and where am I trying to go? So there are plenty of needle varieties out there. What I will say is that if you struggle with one single point of contact and the retention that comes with that single point of contact, you are absolutely going to struggle more with more points of contact. Now, a single needle can create more trauma because it can sink right in. But on the converse side of that, or the alternate side of that, multiple needle configurations, or mags that are not only multiple needle configurations, but maybe stacked unevenly, or have space not only between them here, but also here they could be staggered, and not understanding how that contact is relatable, or sometimes they're curved, or soft edge mag, or flat across, right? You have to really understand the surface tension that's involved with that. And you can create more trauma with more needle configurations by not having proper contact than you could with a single needle. So, I would say if you are getting great retention and great results with a single needle, and you're understanding it really well, and you can work through the diameters and know what's going on, then maybe you want to start with liner or shader configurations first, because they're at least circular and not as kind of tricky as mags, I guess would be a good word, right? And we got all sorts of things. We've got stacking, we've got staggering. There's a bunch of different worlds there. And when you want to kind of venture into mags, that you really put a lot of work in on latex to understand what that contact looks like and what you need to do. But I do not choose needles based on techniques. I don't choose speed based on the technique name. I don't choose color based on the technique name. So that's something that you guys might want to start to step away from an understanding perspective. With your technique, do you lift your needle off the lips when tattooing? How we do with the brows, or do you stay in the skin while tattooing? I know used to Europeans stay in the skin when they tattoo. Again, Catherine, this is what I need. It's not a technique, right? I mean, it is, I guess, but it's what I need. So by lifting, right, on the edges, right, let's just say we're lifting on the edges, and I'm bringing it towards me, right? I'm keeping that very soft entry and exit, so the sides stay soft, and it blends very well. By keeping the needle in the skin and doing more things like circular motions or opovoids, which are kind of like a spring pulled out, you're going to get a different type of level of saturation. So it's what I need, not per se like a specialized technique. I would say if you are a newer artist, things like staying in the skin, things like circular motions, opovoids, stuff like that, you're going to find them a little bit more difficult. You're going to get probably some banding or some gapping until you really understand how to just bring that needle towards you, right? I always say there's like a learning curve to the learning too. So, step one is rolling over, right? And we want to be able to do a nice back brush, keep things evenly. You're not getting banding. You're able to repeat your pattern. You're able to get that first layer down very well before you start to add in some of those more saturative movements. So that way you aren't creating maybe gaps in your coverage and stuff like that you would then have to go back and fix, right? That first pass across the lip is the only time you really get that virgin skin. And once the skin is ablated and punctured with the needle, you are now working on skin that's been traumatized. And that trauma response from the body is also going to increase the swelling in the lip. It's going to increase the tension in the lip because of that swelling. So it's going to get more and more difficult to work on as you go. So you want to make sure that that first pass is really laid down well. But I don't think that it's, one technique is better or worse than the other. I think that it's a learning progression. And I can do lips absolutely beautifully just by back brushing with a single needle. And that's helped me build up to other things that I may want to use or need as that treatment is progressing underneath me. Different clients need different things. I had a fellow artist on the table yesterday, and she has beautiful big lips that are extremely dark, like this color dark. And I had to use a lot of things in my arsenal to really get that job done. So, just be mindful that you might have to change some things, and it's okay. All right. February, what a pretty name. Love Indonesia. So February, so it kind of goes back to everything I've really been saying. It depends on what my client needs, right? So sometimes I layer. It depends on where the darkness is in my neutralizations, how dense it is, how saturated it is. I might choose to layer. Sometimes I mix everything in one cup. It depends on what I need. And that comes a lot with experience, and it's something I dive in pretty deeply into in my classes. It's a little hard to kind of explain a big giant blanket thing like that in a webinar, but it's different, and it just depends on what my goal is and what my client's goal is and what I need. Sometimes mixing in a cup is not enough to target neutralizations that have a really hard stop and start between the colors on the lips, where you've got somebody who may be a little less saturated, where the color's more diffused or softer throughout. So I can make some different choices in how I mix my pigments, how I shade. But great question. Okay. Ellie, do you show how to mix colors outside your pigments that you created? So I teach color theory, and I teach pigment science. So that way, no matter what it is that you're using, you can understand. Remember, these are tools, right? And they're made by different brands. And I am not going to give people, pigment mix charts. It's not paint by number. I wish it was, right? You're going to really need to be able to critically think. And the only way that you're going to be able to think critically is if you stop looking for people to give you color mixes and start looking for a way for you to pick that for yourself. And the way to do that is to understand the color of the canvas, the color composition and the color theory of the pigments themselves, and how those two combine to give you that healed result. So that would be something I would highly, highly recommend. I do teach color theory. You can take it with me. You can learn it other ways. Again, you can find that at Sculpted Studies. But color and pigment science is incredible. It takes me 30 days to teach that class. I always say, it's not your typical online course. It is 30 days. It's a 30-day class conducted online. We kick off with a huge live Zoom that is recorded, so if you can't make it, it's totally okay. Sometimes they run 6, 7, 8 hours long, so some people have to pop in and out as well, but you have 30 days for that replay. We have a virtual chat group that we are in nonstop over that 30 days. There's homework assignments, there are quizzes, there are exercises, there's a whole bunch of things so that you can really learn the material. I do not just give away certificates because you've bought a class. Like, it's just not how I operate from an I love them for different reasons, and including my own. And knowing that's your arsenal, that's your weapon. And I also do the same thing for brows. It's definitely different color theory, and the pigment science is kind of the same, but applied in a very different way, but over that same course. And you don't want to have to be a slave to what color do you use. I see it all the time in my captions, like, what colors are you using and what's your ratio, what's your mix? My mix for that particular client is going to be pretty relevant for you. And if you're putting up a photo, let's just say in a group or whatever, I don't know the lighting conditions you've taken that photo under. I don't know how that photo was taken. I don't know if that's really a true to life photo or not. And choosing a color based on that photo is irresponsible from my side, and using the recommendation from that kind of caption group, I feel, is also irresponsible, in my opinion, from an artist perspective. First of all, you don't know the experience of the person answering you. You don't know if they see the photo the same way that you do. We don't know, again, if that photo was taken correctly. And now you are putting your client's results in the hands of a stranger you were just so happy to just get an answer for. So put that power in your hands and become an empowered artist. It's, in my opinion, the strongest legs that you can stand on.